There we go, it started.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Right, and people are coming on, so we'll kick off now. So good morning, everyone. Hope you're all well. Had a good weekend. No doubt keen to be back in work. Okay, maybe not keen, but back in work. That's a start. So let's just kick off. This week we've got Gareth with us. Hi, Gareth.
Morning or afternoon.
And we've got Jake marshalling. Hi, Jake. And we've got Kevin with us. Kevin's got to go just before 12:30.
Hi there. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I got to disappear early, but I've got a meeting with BAIS.
Okay. And we've got Naomi with us. Hi, Naomi.
Hello, everyone.
You're with us for the whole time, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Laura is not with us, I think, today. She's got another meeting. So anyway, should we kick off? Oh, and by the way, for anybody who's in the slightest bit interested, Happy New Year. It is the year of the tiger tomorrow. And in our household, that's quite an exciting thing because my wife is Chinese and obviously half my family are Chinese. So anyway, so there we go. So Kung Hai Fu Choi to all of you. Right, okay, so we got a few things to discuss. We're going to talk about the new sanctions. We're going to return to cost of living because you said that you would like to go to cost of living. Laura's with us. Hi, Laura. I thought you were away today. But let's start off as usual with council tax and business rates, and over to you, Kevin.
This week is going to be very brief because for once we've got no fresh guidance that I'm aware of from BIS. So we're still on the third version of the guidance. I can see Laura's smiling from that. So basically, as we were trying to get out the payments on grants, we are having to provide data to the BIS every 2 weeks now instead of every week. Obviously, CARF scheme, the COVID Additional Relief Fund, is ongoing, and there are many, many different ways of how authorities are tackling that, which is very interesting in itself. You have until the 30th of September to actually award that. It's not within the guidance, it's separate legislation. The grants, the OHL grant will close on the 18th. For applications close on the 18th of March. You must have dealt with everything by the 31st of March. That is apart from the reconciliations and the assurance work, which will be ongoing. The assurance work has been put on hold for most authorities until the 1st of April, as is the reconciliations. ARG is still the 31st of March. There is no end claim date. You've just got to have done everything by the 31st of March. So watch this space, really. I am anticipating further changes to businesses as we go on through the year. And Happy New Year for the Chinese New Year. Have you got any New Year resolutions, Malcolm?
Oh, my main New Year resolution is my usual New Year's resolution, which is not to make any New Year's resolutions. So it's something I've managed to keep for many a year now.
That's good. I thought you'd want to go with a bang, Malcolm.
I'm not even going to consider what that means.
Isn't keeping that resolution an actual breach of your New Year's resolution?
That's a good one, Bob.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it. You've ruined my afternoon now whilst I ponder on that.
Keeping to my New Year's resolution, Malcolm.
Naomi, do you have anything to add to the BIS stuff?
No, I'm just hoping it's quieter for the next sort of few weeks. Be lovely.
And do you think it will be quieter for the next few weeks, Naomi?
No, but I'm considering, doing offerings to various gods. I do think that we think that it is as it is. We all made representations about a variety of things. No, we're going to keep the the end of the 28th of February is, must do all your decisions, and then, in a couple of days it all changes. I know that's what we wanted, but they were so steadfast in not changing that date, and then all of a sudden they did.
Well, I've sometimes wondered whether consultation is really anything more than just lip service to the rest of us to make us think that we've got a view. But maybe I'm just being mean. On that basis, I'm sure when asked about this subject, we all said, yeah, go ahead and do this. This is a great idea. Right, so new UC sanctions. Claimants are to be given just 4 weeks, that's down from 3 months, to find a job within their preferred sector. What do you reckon, Laura? This is a good thing?
No. Sorry, I thought I'd just be blunt about that. What a stupid idea is that? Sorry. Most of the jobs available in the common market have got a skill set that you need to have training for. I mean, it's not like we can all go out and drive lorries because there's a shortage of lorry drivers because you've got to have a HGV. But it's okay. We're going to shut it all down to 4 weeks because the government goes, oh, there's lots of jobs available, without looking at the skill set of the people that are unemployed to find out if there's jobs available in those skill sets. It's just the government's way of pushing people when times are a little bit hard to blame everybody else for the unemployed. So I'm not impressed, sorry.
I'd say it's worse than that, actually, Laura. It's a completely pointless, vicious circle, because the first thing is, if you're in a job centre, the jobs that are available are the ones that employers have put in, because they want to get somebody to apply for them. But they want to get somebody to apply for them that can do the job. They don't want hundreds and hundreds of pointless applications because people are forced into applying for jobs they've got no hope of sort of matching the skill set for. And that happens already, of course, with the number of job applications you've got to make in a week under the conditionality rules. So all that'll happen is that employers will stop passing jobs into job centres, so there'll be even fewer of them, and there'll be lower quality jobs. And then, of course, the people that have left some jobs in there will get even more people pointlessly applying for them and wasting more and more of their time. So they'll pull it out. So you'll end up with a situation where there are no jobs available, but you've got to apply for them.
Absolutely. From a work coach's point of view, I mean, can you imagine all those things they've got to sit and look through on a journal? There's no capacity in the first place, and just by cutting the numbers down makes it look like we're returning to normal, when actually, in reality, no, we're not returning to normal. We're still playing catch up in the last 2 years.
So we have Lynn, Malcolm. Lynn's raised her hand.
Okay, go on, Lynn.
I was just going to say that I totally agree with both Laura and Gareth that it is the most ridiculous thing. I mean, the last time I was involved in any recruitment, we had, for a benefit officer, we had over 250 applications, of which I would say probably only 20 were suitable. It was just absolutely ridiculous. It was window cleaners. It was actually, this will make you laugh, Malcolm. It was actually a fraud officer that we were looking for. And somebody said they knew all about fraud because they'd been investigated. I mean, it's honest to goodness, it's just, and this is just going to make it even worse. And I asked HR, I said, do I really have to, score them for shortlisting? Yes. I didn't want to score 250 blimmin' papers, of which, like I said, only about 20 was suitable. But goodness knows what it's going to be like now. Absolutely ridiculous. Sorry, I just needed that rant because it reminded me.
We're always pleased to hear a rant from you, Lynn. It saves the rest of us from ranting. The new policy also includes tailored support from and face-to-face time with job coaches. So from what you were saying, Gareth and Laura and Lynn, that's going to be a pretty thankless task for the job coaches.
And for the people that are then doing the recruiting.
And for the claimants.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, they have doubled the number of job coaches, so I suppose they've got something to do, but they're still under a lot of pressure, I guess.
Yeah. This is all part of a new initiative to get 500,000 people into work by June to try and fill the 1.2 million national job vacancies. Liz, is this a plan, do you think, that we'll get anywhere close to this?
What do you think I think?
I know exactly what you think, but what about everybody else? They don't know what you think.
I love this. I love this whole idea of you're going to have face-to-face time with job coaches to help claimants find work. Well, going by what Laura and Lynn say, I mean, actually, that's rubbish, isn't it? I mean, who are these job coaches? What training do they actually have? Can they really help people into work that is sustainable? I say no.
And the other thing is that only a tiny number of people, stay on universal credit for anything more than a few months anyway.
Exactly. It's not those people on UC, actually, that's the problem. They tend to come in and out and actually wash into jobs quite easily. It's those people that are hidden, that aren't part of UC, that aren't on any payroll, the hidden people that they need to get.
That's an increasing number, isn't it, Liz? I mean, that number's going up, according to the ONS, by quite a substantial rate.
It's just nasty. Let's put it that way. It's a nasty policy.
And there are a kind of million.
Sorry,
Gareth, let's carry on.
No, it's a nasty policy with consequences outside the scope of DWP's thinking, in my opinion.
It wasn't announced by the DWP, was it?
I don't know. All I saw
it was announced. It was announced by the Prime Minister. Yes.
It's a Boris distraction.
Yes.
Cheers. I suspect the DWP didn't actually know this was coming.
Well, all I saw was Therese Coffey talking about Kickstart, and we're not altogether talking about young people here, are we?
No.
We're talking about families and people who need a job to keep things. I'm not saying young people don't need a job, but it's just such a nonsense.
And a lot of missing people you talked about, Liz, of course, are the older people that haven't gone back into work post-pandemic, the over 55s, and they can take their pension earlier now. They can make use of the savings. They can just have a bit of an easier life, maybe.
Taking their lump sum, possibly taking some money out of their property, but they're 55 and they're not on any employment. They don't show.
No.
Right. Okay. I do realise, Liz, that you'll talk about me and Kevin later on in the year.
Right. I actually can't see you retiring, but there you go. I find it difficult to think that Kevin might retire. But then on the other hand, I suppose he's not really retiring. Kevin, are you still there?
No, he's gone. He's gone now.
No.
He's rushed off. So let's move on. Cost of living. There are a few cost of living things. We said we wanted to talk a bit more about cost of living, so I've picked up for us to discuss. Joseph Rowntree Foundation has said that while households across the board have faced bills, this is certainly electricity bills and energy bills, of 40 to 47% increase from April, there would be quite large variations in the abilities of families to be able to cope with those energy price increases. Actually, I've got that wrong. It's just generally cost of living is 40 to 47%. Energy bills are going to amount to 6% of the average income of a middle income family, but it will amount to 18% of a low income family. So they have some concerns about this. This is just an increasing problem, isn't it? Not setting aside any potential war in the Ukraine. Laura.
I have to say, I'm a bit sad, Malcolm. I watched a programme, it was on really early on BBC News, and it was talking about the inflation, and it was talking about how the gas prices are going up, and they reckon that the UK is going to have a 50% rise, and there's 70% rise expected for the US, and it's 28% rise for Germany. And what they were saying is that they were on the world level, everyone knew that this was coming, because at the end of the COVID process, the demand on utilities is going to be a lot higher for manufacturing industries, because they're going to have a greater demand on the electricity and the gas to get their factories back into place from a year of no trading. And that's why they reckon there's a massive increase. But what they were looking at was about what we were kind of talking about beforehand with Gareth, about if you remove the VAT, well, actually, if you're heating that massive car in a garage, you're going to benefit from it, not necessarily the poorer person at the bottom of the run, where actually 5% isn't really going to make a difference because they still can't afford the 150 quid. And then they were talking about the fact that they reckon the average direct debit is going to go up £60 per month on top from April onwards, and that people are not going to be able to afford to go on a holiday. And then there's the wider economy issue. It's that people can't afford to go on to the seaside tourist places, and then they're going to have the knock-on effect because the cost of living has gone up, and therefore we're going to spiral into not just a deep recession, but we would go into a worldwide recession because of it. It's really interesting, actually, on the BBC.
Mm. And Gareth, this one of the big concerns that sort of almost everybody has, but do you think it's really hit home with the members of the public yet that this is going to get worse and worse?
Well, it will hit home for a lot of people, of course, when the bigger bills actually sort of arrive on the doorstep or get direct debited or something. People, of course, for whom it might be hitting already are those people on things like prepayment meters and token meters still, where their rate, kind of is dynamically adjusted earlier on. So in fact, they end up sort of paying on the spot. Now, I just struggle to understand what can be done with a government that can see that people are going to have less money to meet their essential needs, and yet still, cuts the universal credit by 20 quid a week, puts up national insurance levy for people in work by another 1.25% kind of earnings. There's just no recognition of the reality for people, and it's still because Westminster, I think, lives in a bubble. It's a nice, warm, protected bubble. With lots of cheese and wine, and that's what they think everybody lives like.
Gareth, what would be interesting to know where the household grant funding spending is going, because governments have obviously given us a pot of money, and I won't say it's a lot because it's not, but a pot of money for you can approach a council, whether second tier or first tier, to say, I'm struggling with, can you help me? And whether it's school children's clothes, food on the table, or utility bills. It would be interesting to see in the shift from when we had that beforehand in the summer, where the pressures and the demands are now, because that would be a direct correlation to where the cost of living problems are.
It would be interesting, and I don't know whether the local authorities keep stats in a really structured form for that kind of payment. I mean, Welsh Government has decided to basically give £100 to every working age family on kind of means tested benefits, except those who are oil, kind of with oil heating, because for some reason they think that they can be helped by the discretionary assistance fund in Wales. But in terms of the discretionary stuff that English local authorities are doing, how much of the kind of stats are kept, and how much are they available for people to do that kind of analysis?
I would suggest very little, Gareth, actually. I suspect there's probably virtually no stats around this at all. I mean, I'm not saying there could not be stats, but I just don't think they are particularly kept. I don't know who would take responsibility. So I suspect probably be hard pushed to find them. Maybe some local authorities. Kevin, I wanted to ask you about this because presumably this has an impact on some of the smaller businesses as well, does it not?
I think it does, but I think with most businesses have either survived or been affected by so many things so related over the last 22, 24 months. So you cannot put a hand on your heart and say it's specifically one issue or several.
No, but this is about tipping points, isn't it? Really, and that's
but every business is different, and the tipping point for businesses is probably very different for each business, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Which is why I was asking about, the smaller businesses, that they're likely to feel that pinch quicker.
They may well do, because the bigger businesses have got more of a reserve sort of thing to actually do. But I know some small businesses that very much flourished in the last few years. They've been really innovative and really flourished. And we've probably got more of an idea of our local business base than we've ever had through links with grants and other information as well. So, but yes, some are greatly affected.
Okay. This graph, which the Guardian produced from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation stuff, I thought was quite interesting, because that really shows where the extra spend in quite a strong way. Is this how you would expect to see it?
Yeah, pretty much.
And
I'm muted. I think so, yes. Also, I think well, it's not interesting, it's just depressing, frankly. I think actually going back to just slightly to the previous slide, I think what really has hit home to people is the work that, dare I say it, Jack Monroe has done in relation to what the actual cost is, because all these figures, 18% of this, 18% of that, she absolutely nailed it down to saying that absolutely everything. I've forgotten, I think the whole analogy was, an expensive ready meal is still £6.50, whereas baked beans in a tin value has gone up by what, 20p, 16p, whatever it is. So again, it is it's definitely going to hit. Oh, you've done it. I hadn't looked, but I think that really has hit home to people, because it's so much more of a better example. I wouldn't know what would happen. I know this sounds blasé, but I really wouldn't know what would happen if my energy costs went up by 50% or 18%. Obviously I'd feel it. But it really is that nitty gritty that I think gets through it. And also, we going back to measuring things, there's got to be a rise in the use of food banks, more and more and more and more, which is, to me, ultimately depressing that food banks have become part of social security. Anyway, I'm ranting a bit.
I have to say, I'm going to comment this, because I think that people have made savings for the last 2 years, because you save for the winter and that principle. Now the winter's come along, you've used your savings earlier in the year when things were a bit tight because obviously your job changes, or maybe your pension didn't change. So I am in agreement. Malcolm, do you still get the warm winter fuel fund you used to get for the pensioners?
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Because I know they were talking about stopping it, and I didn't know if they actually did or not. Did they only just stop it for those people that are no longer a UK domicile?
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, there are cold weather payments as well, where the average temperature in an area drops below freezing. But that doesn't get triggered very often at all.
Yeah, no. and though I'm a pensioner, I don't get it because my wife is not a pensioner and working.
Oh, you're mixed age.
Yes.
Oh, how inconvenient for you, Malcolm.
I know. I've put her on notice.
If you go and marry a teen, what do you expect, Malcolm?
On a serious note, though, I do think you're right, because most couples will be mixed age now with the age amalgamation issues.
Yeah.
So you could have a pensioner at home watching daytime television all day, higher cost because they tend to sit around more than maybe someone who goes out to work, and therefore the government have just assumed therefore you can afford it because you've got an employed person in the family household, and that's not the case.
Well, it's not even that, is it? If you look at the figures, I think I worked it out yesterday for somebody, from April, a single pensioner gets £62 odd a week more than a pensioner with a younger partner, even where there's no income coming into the house at all. So it's obviously cheaper for two people to live than one.
I see.
Because you're on pension credit as a single pensioner. Once you've got a partner, you're down to half the levels of universal credit.
Yeah.
Well, that means, Malcolm, you can't get divorced yet. You can't get rid of your wife.
Right.
I
Signing off, Malcolm, by the way.
Okay.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks,
Cheers.
Kevin. Cheers. Bye.
Just as an aside, I once did a training session for a group of financial advisors for an insurance company and explained the issue around mixed-age couples to them. And one of them said quite seriously, I suppose that means I better sell my shares in the Thai Brides Agency.
It's
yeah,
a rich life in this field.
So I've just come back to this slide because one of the things that Joseph Rowntree Foundation warned of was that there was little prospect of reversing the trends around the 2012-13 of the rising child poverty, which has risen by 4 percentage points to almost a third of children by 2019-20, and rising pensioner poverty, which has risen by 5 percentage points to almost a fifth of pensioners by 2019-20. So they see a gloomy outlook on all of this. Shall we just come back to the Jack Monroe thing then? So Jack Monroe basically took on the ONS, who basically agreed with her. Have you followed this at all, Gareth? Because
I've been looking at it because I'd very much like to take this. It's the Vimes Boot Index.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
For people who aren't Terry Pratchett fans, it's this idea that if you buy cheap boots, they last you a couple of years and you have wet feet. But if you buy expensive boots, they last you a lot longer and your feet stay dry. But poor people can't afford to buy expensive boots, even though they're better value. Oh, there you are. Thanks, Malcolm, for that. But I mean, it's been a reality, forever, I suppose, that if you've got a lot of money, you can afford to buy things in bulk and at a time when the prices are low. And if you haven't got a lot of money, you have to buy them when you need them, and in small quantities, and often at outrageously expensive prices, because there's only one shop that you can walk to, and they put the prices up.
Yeah, and that seems to be, I mean, whilst we know of this through Terry Pratchett's books, I mean, it was actually first expounded, I think, back in 1934 by an economist then who highlighted it. Though you'd think we probably did know it all the time. But Liz, you also picked up on this point that Jack Monroe was making about things like stock cubes from Sainsbury's.
Yeah, what can I say? I mean, that's absolutely that's it. I mean, why things like, I noticed that myself actually about vegetable stock, and not particularly vegetable stock, but anything to do with vegan or vegetarian. There's a huge premium on any of that. And basically, they're stock cubes, aren't they? Why should there be any difference between that and the other? But I mean, 10p to 39p, that's a huge jump.
Yeah.
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 Basically the same product.
Yeah, and I mean, this covers really the whole range, doesn't it, of products from that are out there. I mean, I don't know.
Well, we all fall prey to it, don't we? As she says here, last year the smart price pasta in my local Asda was 29p for 500 grams. Today it's unavailable, so the cheapest bag is 70p for the same product in a more colourful packaging. Well, how many of us actually go towards that pasta which has a more colourful packaging? There are quite a lot of them quite a lot of people that would do that before this, despite the fact you think about it, it's the same bloody pasta in a different bag. It's like value and finest range, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and actually something like pasta actually doesn't vary greatly.
No, quite.
It's fried pasta,
Yeah.
whether you're paying for the most expensive or the cheapest. I'm just curious, everybody else who's out there, has anybody else noticed this? Has anybody, what's the price of your shopping basket for your weekend shop? Have you noticed it going up, Lynn?
Yeah,
Yes.
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would suspect that a lot of people, because of what's happened in the last almost 2 years, get their shopping delivered and probably don't notice at all, in terms of what's there, because you'll click on your favorites or whatever and order your favorites week after week. My husband is absolutely terrible. I could open a chemist shop with the amount of shampoo and shower gel I've got, but most people do end up just clicking, well, that was my shop last week, I've used it all up, so I'm going to get it again. So I just don't think people notice it, Malcolm, initially.
Yeah, Bob, you've noticed, haven't you? Wagstaff.
Yeah, I've noticed my weekly shopping has gone up. My wife drinks an inordinate amount of Tesco's Diet Cola, and it's gone up by 20% almost overnight. And there's lots of things like that that are just significantly more expensive now than they were this time last year. It's only small amounts. You're only talking about 5 pence here and 5 pence there.
Yeah.
But when you add all the 5 pences up, they come to a significant amount.
And I mean, I noticed stuff like tinned tomatoes have gone up by about 25 pence, even when they're on reduction, which is pretty much a staple of quite a lot of cooking these days.
And you're having to cut back on the foie gras and the caviar, I understand.
Yeah. I've just had to buy a goose, to make my own.
I won't tell you that caviar comes from a goose, but never mind.
And
sorry.
No, after you, Liz.
We keep hearing from the government what it is they're not going to do. And as we had the discussion last time about VAT, well, they're not going to do that. They're not going to reverse any of the changes. What are they going to do? What are they thinking of doing? I don't suppose anybody knows the answer, to actually help with this cost of living rise, because they keep saying they're going to do something.
But is that not the challenge? What is it? Can they?
Well, yes, I think it is. But you think about everything. I mean, it'll be something, well, in my opinion, which is probably not worth much, but it'll be something quite lazy. Like, helping those people who are on universal credit. And we all know that it isn't just about those people on universal credit. It's those people that are, I'm not going to use Theresa May's just about managing, but it is quite a good thing to use. I mean, it isn't just about those people who are on universal credit.
But there was another report, wasn't there?
Credit.
There was another report that came out over the last few days, which has identified that some of the really big impacts are going to be in that very group, the just about managing, which actually is probably a fair number of people who are on this call, I would suggest.
Yeah, quite likely. And particularly, looking at the rise in pasta, people are going to fall more and more into that just about managing category.
The interesting question is going to be for people who find that they can't now afford everything. What are they going to drop? Are they going to not pay rent? Are they going to do without heating? Are they going to do without food or clothes? Or what gets dropped first?
Not quite.
I thought that was probably, the case when we can go back. Let's see if I can get back to it. Was the slide which showed the actual expenditure on household. I mean, this is something I've been looking at recently, and it is I mean, it is quite interesting when you look across this sort of here with household goods and services, you know, and alcohol and tobacco, and you see that increases, the alcohol and tobacco increases as you go down the poorest routes. But I mean, this is just a percentages game, isn't it?
Yep.
Actually, that amount that is being spent by the poorest could be 10% of what's being spent by the richest, but just as a proportion of the household budget. I mean, it'd be interesting to see that over a time lapse, to see, you know, how that's increased and dropped over time. But you know, you see things like transport costs, you know, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? That as a percentage of a poorer family's expenditure, it's a lot smaller than of a richer person's expenditure, which kind of suggests that actually the travel to work area for poorer families has got to be a lot smaller, despite the DWP having increased it a couple of years ago to 2 hours. You know, it does seem as though we haven't really got much of a grip, or at least the government has not got much of a grip on what constitutes household spending and where to pull the levers and give the help. And I think, I can't remember which one of you said it, but I'm quite sort of fearful that some of the solutions to this will be things like, you know, food tokens and stuff like that, as you say, to people on universal credit, as a way of trying to rectify an issue which will not go any way to rectifying it.
And linking, you know, back to the earlier kind of question around trying to get people into work. Again, what isn't in that chart, but is really, really important, is the cost of childcare.
Yeah.
If you want somebody to get into work who's got to have their kids looked after while they're working, finding childcare, paying for childcare when the support for it is maxed out at kind of 80%, it is incredibly difficult. And of course, the more they sanction you for not working enough hours, well, the more childcare you've got to pay, and it runs out of support pretty early on as well. So there is this kind of integrated problem that again just doesn't get addressed.
No, and I do wonder where will it become, you know, where will it come addressed? I mean, that seems to me as though that's the trickier thing. I suspect probably devolved governments are a bit closer to this than central government.
We always used to feel that we were kind of very much the poor relations in Wales, and I think probably in Scotland, in terms of support for things like, well, support for people generally. I remember being told once how dreadful it was that a law centre in London Borough was being closed, because that would only leave them with 3 at a time when there was 1 law centre for the whole of Wales. But now, yeah, the devolved governments are much, I think, much closer to you know, the people, and much more aware of the issues around kind of poverty and hardship, and doing a lot more to address them. I know that Welsh government's putting a big investment in its terms into supporting people, and Scottish government, of course, is beginning to develop its own social security system, which provides more help and support.
Yeah,
and whilst England, of course, dumps it all on the poor local authorities and leaves it to them to sort it out.
That was going to be my comment, that the government's got to do something. There's a lot of pressure for them to do it, but I don't think that whatever they do is particularly joined up. So there's a pot of money over here, a pot of money over there, pot of money over there, and the cost of administration is just horrendous.
Yeah.
Pull it all together, have a coherent strategy that is effective and efficient to deliver, which is what we in local authorities are doing every day, looking at how best we can deliver what we have to deliver. And I think certainly over the last 18 months, Treasury have opened up the purse, chucked a wad of cash out without really thinking of how it should be administered, by whom, and what that cost is. You only have to look at the self-isolation payments, and the cost of administration is what, around £250 for a £500 grant. That's not value for money at all.
No, and also the quite clearly not recovering the levels of fraud either.
Wow.
Which, you know, it's
Benefit fraud since, you know, it went back has just been a joke. I mean, the fraud officers, they must be having a really tough time in DWP as an individual, because they haven't got the support or the strategy either.
No. Okay, I make it 12:41, so we'll wrap up now. I noticed one or two people have had to nip off to other meetings. So can I thank you all for coming along today? I hope this has been useful. Thank you to my panelists. Thank you, Naomi and Gareth and Laura, and thank you to those who have contributed. Thanks, Lynn, and thanks, Bob, and also thanks, Jake, for marshalling. Okay, we'll see you all next week. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.